Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews here, and it looks like we could be seeing a Canadian election sooner than you might think. There's been a lot of drama in the House of Commons lately, and so much so that it could be pushing us towards an election. There are a whole bunch of different things that have all led up to this point, but it basically hinges on the creation or destruction of an anti-corruption committee. Liberals are saying one thing, and the Conservatives and other opposition parties are saying a different thing. And it's exactly this butting of heads that could cause the other parties in the House of Commons to lose confidence in the Liberals, thus forcing an election. In this video, we're going to cover what happened to get us here, why there's this butting of heads, and when you could expect to find out if you're going to be heading to the polls sometime soon. But before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, hey, how's it going? It's nice to meet you. My name's Russell, and on this channel I post videos about business, investing, a little bit of real estate, personal finance, and news that could affect Canadians' money. If that sounds like something you'd want to stay up to date with, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. I'm bringing videos just like this one pretty much every day, so if there's something that's happening that could affect you, your money, and as a result your family, you're going to find it out here. And while you're at it, hit that like button and turn it blue, because one click of that button could send the video to hundreds of people that could be looking for it. I'd appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too. Thanks so much for doing that, and now let's get into the juicy stuff. On October 17th, there was an article that was published that was titled, "Why Parliament Could Be on the Brink of a Snap Election Again." This article was written by Aaron Wary, and I'll put a link to it in the description if you want to follow along. It gets into even more depth about these topics, so when you're finished watching this video, if you want to know more, you should really check it out. But I'll do my best to summarize the points that are in here and try to help you understand why we could be headed to the polls. If you've been following the news lately, you'll no doubt have heard about the We Charity scandals. Essentially, a lot of people think that the way the Liberals chose how to dole out some of this COVID recovery money to different businesses and charities, they think it was a little bit sketchy. So recently, the Conservatives put forward a motion that would essentially create an anti-corruption committee, and their goal would be to look for corruption inside of the happenings of the Liberal Party. They want to look into a few areas in particular, so I'll explain the backstory of why these areas are so important. The main thing this committee would look at is how the Liberals handled their COVID response money. This touches on what I was just talking about with the We Charity scandal. The Conservatives want to take a look at this among other money-related issues and make sure that nobody took advantage of the situation for their own personal gain. The second question that the committee would try to answer is, why did the Liberals really choose to prorogue Parliament a little while back? If you don't remember, in August the Liberals prorogued, or essentially paused, Parliament. They said that they wanted to create a new session of Parliament because the old one was outdated. When they first started the session, COVID hadn't even happened, so they said, let's take a break and we'll come back to it and we'll all be focused on where we are currently as opposed to what we were focused on before. But for a lot of people, this seemed a little too convenient. They prorogued Parliament right when the Prime Minister was taking a lot of heat for the very wee scandal that we've been talking about. As a result, some committees that were already formed to take a look at these issues had to stop what they were doing. If there was corruption in what the Liberals had done, this could be kind of convenient for them. So Conservatives and other opposition parties are like, okay, did you really prorogue Parliament or pause it because of the issues that you're talking about, or was it just to get out of hot water? So the Conservatives want this new committee to take a look at that as well. And the third thing this committee would do, it would take a closer look at the organization that plans all of the Trudeau family's speaking events. They'd want to know how the money was handled, who it was from, like who was paying for these speaking events, and how that could have an effect on Canadian politics. It sounds like they want to make sure there wasn't any under-the-table deals that would look like a contribution to the speaking fund, but really it was agreed upon that it got them something else. Nobody knows for sure if this even happened, but the Conservatives want to make this committee in order to take a closer look at it. This is another thing that there was already a committee taking a look at before Parliament was paused. When it was paused, the order for that committee expired, and there ceased to be anyone looking into this issue. And even when the committee was working, they said that the Liberals provided them with documents that were heavily redacted and many words were blacked out, so they couldn't actually understand anything in the documents that they were trying to analyze. This is another reason why some Conservatives believe that this question number 2 that the committee would look at, why it was all prorogued in the first place, is so important. So those are the 3 main things that this committee would take a look at. And if you're wondering how this could all cause an election, stay tuned, we're getting there. In order for this committee to actually be formed, there would have to be a vote on it, and the Conservatives don't have enough votes for this unless the Bloc Quebecois and the NDP jump on board and say, hey, yeah, we'll support this. But the Liberals think that this is all just a big game designed by the Conservatives to make the Liberals, and as a result Trudeau, look bad. Here's what the Prime Minister said a few days ago when a reporter was grilling him on this question.
Entirely focused on the second wave of COVID-19. We are working to support Canadians, to support workers, to support families, to support small businesses as we get through this second wave. We will continue to stay focused on what we need to do to support Canadians facing a very difficult time right now. The Conservatives continue to want to focus on We Charity, so be it. But I appeared at committee myself months ago. We released thousands of pages of documents. We've been open and transparent on these questions. But if the Conservatives continue to want to focus on that, they certainly can. We will stay focused on Canadians while we let committees do their work independently.
So he's essentially saying there's more important things to think about right now. But some people are saying, is it not possible for the government to focus on two things at once? The Liberals went on to say that this committee is just designed to create constant news that would be sent out via the media to Canadians. Even if the Anti-Corruption Committee doesn't even find a little bit of corruption, still, Canadians are going to be constantly hearing on the news, Liberals, anti-corruption, Liberals, anti-corruption, and eventually the Liberals are going to be paired with this idea of being corrupt. Now, I'm not saying if they are or they aren't, but you've got to admit, if you're hearing those two words in the same sentence constantly, the overall opinion in Canada could shift. And being associated with corruption definitely is not a good look when you're trying to remain popular in the eyes of your voters. So, what are the Liberals going to do about it? They're going to make a committee of their own. Or that's what they want to do. They're saying, hey, we haven't done anything wrong. You can take a look at our books and find out exactly how we've spent this money. Essentially, this touches on some of the points that the Conservatives were getting at. But the big difference is that there's no way this committee would be called the Anti-Corruption Committee. Instead, they tried to make a more broad approach, hopefully giving the other parties the information that they want without being constantly associated with corruption. But how could this end up in an election, you may ask? Well, as I'm sure you already know, in Canada, elections happen at regularly scheduled times, but they can also happen when the opposition parties have lost confidence in the current government. This loss of confidence could come in a number of ways, but to put it simply, when the government that's in power loses an important vote, this could cause an election. So if the Conservatives' motion to create this anti-corruption committee passes and the Liberals vote against it, or the Liberals' idea for the committee doesn't pass and nobody votes for it, either of these two situations could result in the Prime Minister calling for an election. At this point, it seems like it's pretty much a big game of chicken, with every single party kind of trying to feel out the other one, thinking like, are you really ready for an election? Would you go through with this? Most parties really don't seem all that ready for an election. They'd have to get so much ready, and they'd also have to have the confidence that they could do well in the election in the first place. There's a lot that would have to be done and said if we were to see one of these snap elections. For example, the Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole hasn't really even given us a really good idea of all the things he'd do if he were Prime Minister. But it's pretty hard to know how each party individually feels about their prospects if there were to be an election right now. But given the fact that it's a minority government, if any party really wants an election this fall, we could be seeing one. All it would take is an organized vote against the Liberals to push us into election territory. So depending on how the parties are feeling about this issue and how they're feeling about their overall chances in an election, we could either have an election around the corner or it could be way far off. But I'm curious about what you think of all this. Do you think it's the right time for an election and maybe the chance for a change of gears with how this country's run? Or on the other hand, do you think that now, in the midst of a global pandemic, it might not be the best time? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit that like button. Just one click of the button spreads this video to so many people, and I'd really appreciate it if you help the channel out that way. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. I'm posting updates about the CRB, about Canadian politics, about Canadian finance, and all this information that you could find helpful. So if you want to follow along, make sure to hit those buttons. And with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope this video is giving you something to think about, and I'll see you next time.